Hello YouTube, long time no see. This is a short announcement video for a small series of videos I want to make, a little project I'm engaged in relating to truth and knowledge. The starting point for this was a video I watched with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson in conversation. I think the topic of the conversation was supposed to be about morality, but it got very quickly bogged down into a really tangled conversation about the nature of truth. Each man seemed to have very different understandings of what constituted truth. It was not a good conversation in my opinion. Neither of them seemed very generous toward the other, and the examples they were both coming up with didn't really illustrate the points that either of them wanted to make, I didn't think, very effectively. But it was kind of interesting, and I was reminded of this conversation recently because I saw a blog post by one Professor Phil Moriarty, late of this parish, who included a reference to this in his blog post. Really interesting blog post. I'll leave a description below. And the claim that Philip was making in that blog post was that Peterson was denying the truth of certain empirical claims, or it was at least saying that empirical, i.e. scientific claims, could vary according to some kind of moral evaluation of the project in which these claims were being made. That's kind of it, and I can see where Philip was coming from in that. I think there are points in that which were at the very least ambiguous. So I was reminded of that by reading this blog post, and I looked again at the video of Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, and it is complex, and there are lots of things to unpack in there. So in order to try and clear my own mind a little bit about it, I'm going to try to explore some of the ideas which I think are informing what I think are essentially different epistemologies, different philosophies of knowledge, different understandings of what knowledge and fact and what words like truth mean to these different scholars. Neither of which necessarily reflect my own. I'll try to weave my own in that. But what I've got in mind at the moment is this. What I want to suggest right now in this introductory video is that what we've got at work here are competing epistemologies, competing ways of understanding what words like knowledge, truth, fact, proof, these kind of words mean, and the competition between these often leads to misunderstandings on both parts. So that's the overarching framework, and to try to work through those misunderstandings. What I'm going to follow up this video with is a second video kind of taking the position, or at least interrogating the position held by some people, perhaps like Sam Harris, some on the kind of scientific end of that, who would claim that their form of knowledge, empirical knowledge derived through some kind of scientific processes about the physical world, is the only form of knowledge, and claiming that other epistemologies, the epistemologies found in the humanities, in philosophy, maybe even in art, that those are invalid. I've seen quite a lot of those kind of claims made, so I want to just illustrate the fact that that disparagement, that competition between epistemologies does take place, and that those on the empirical side quite often have a negative view of knowledge claims made on the side of the humanities. The second one I want to make, to follow up on that, is to move to the opposite side and say that there are scholars who are working in the humanities and in philosophy and in those kind of areas who have a similarly negative viewpoint of the concept of knowledge as it's practiced in the sciences, empirical knowledge. Again, I'll be looking at a range of scholars on that end of it, talking about, or if you like, revealing their value judgments about what constitutes empirical knowledge. So that'll set up the competition. Then I want to follow that up with some general information about how these might be resolved, or the different relationships between these epistemologies, how they've come into contact, what kinds of effects are produced by the fact that there are competing epistemologies in place. And then finally what I want to do is to cycle back to the Sam Harris Jordan Peterson conversation to see if I can play out their the particular competition that they're in, the epistemologies that they're holding, how they're being expressed within that conversation, and what kinds of challenges that they're trying to come up with, and how in a sense both men I think are failing to meet those challenges, to find common ground, to find ways of understanding the epistemology, the search for knowledge, search for truth, the meanings of these words even, that the other person is trying to articulate. And I'll maybe try to come up with some examples of my own that better illustrate, ideally, where that conflict lies. I hope you enjoy that, and not quite sure the next video will be up. Watch this space. Thanks very much. Bye.